Bueno, mis queridos amigos de los sonidos del Grand Line, perdón por equivocarme al principio, pero sea bienvenido a este videito también de noticias donde vemos esta entrevista a los compositores de live action de One Piece, Sonya Belousova y Giona, se me olvida su nombre, Giona Ostinelli. Esta entrevista igual de nuestros amigos de Screen Rant. Veamos qué es lo que nos platican, el proceso creativo, tantas cosas que nos pueden platicar. Y la vamos a ir comentando aquí contigo y recuerda darle like y suscribirte para no perderte nada del contenido. Vamos a la entrevista.
We have each character's instrument or snippets of his theme on top of the going merry, blending all together. So
it's all about creating that dialogue. Just as there is a dialogue on screen, there is a dialogue happening musically, and that's what makes all of this cohesive and unified.
like in One Piece.
In One Piece, yes.
Me gusta siempre la
How are you guys
combinación.
doing? Thank you for taking the time.
Clearly,
today.
we're doing not so well.
No, we're doing well.
We're doing great.
Se ve que Sonya Belousova y Giona Ostinelli son súper divertidísimos.
I literally the first question that I had written down to ask you was like, the soundtrack is 4 hours long. Are you okay? Like, like how are you standing? How are you like?
Duró 4 horas.
Like able to do anything? I can't even imagine the amount of work that you all did on this. Like it's unbelievable.
And not just us, it's also like the Greg Hayes, the mix engineers, Dave Colling, the mastering engineer, everybody.
Every soloist, every artist, Aurora, Marcin, Flawless Real Talk, Wonder Girl, our orchestrators, the whole team, the music prep team, like literally the whole music department. They are such rock stars. Like we're so grateful for this fantastic team because we couldn't have done this without any of these people and any of these incredible artists. And 4 hours long, and that's actually great because like if we're talking about a feature film, right, usually when you release the soundtrack, it's about 3/4 length of the film, right, 3/4 of the score. In this case, it's probably not even half of what we wrote for the show. It's in fact a very, very condensed version of what we wrote for the show.
And I think it was, we knew it was very important for the fans to have as much of the music released because every 2 episodes we're meeting new villains, we're in new islands, so we're like, we need to include all the different themes from all the islands, all the different themes from all the villains.
In fact, it's a very character-driven show, right? We have our straw hats. There are 5 of them. These are our main characters. But then, as Giona said, there are all these incredible villains. And every character in this show is very unique in terms of their thematic material, in terms of their instrumentation, in terms of their themes. So not giving that to the fans, like we would have been receiving so much backlash right now. I'll tell you more. When we did The Witcher, we had the song called The Song of the White Wolf, which plays in 2 versions. It plays with a solo violin at the end of the episode, and then it plays with the vocals performed by Declan Debar in the end credits. Well, we just included the end credits with the vocals. We're still hearing back about that we did not include the solo violin version. It's the same exact piece of music, just the solo violin version. We're still hearing that from the fans. So hell yeah, 4 hours long.
Yeah, it was imperative for us to release as much as we could.
Did your experience on The Witcher make
Puta,
you feel
4 horas, güey. 4 horas y al final todo va cambiando, ¿no? O sea, tener piezas para cada villano, para cada isla, para cada sombrero de paja, puta madre, qué trabajazo se aventaron,
like even more pressure coming into this? I mean, I'm sure you already had so much. I know you liked One Piece, like you were a fan already. Like, were you worried of what people were gonna say and think and everything?
No, I don't think so.
Hey, here's the thing. Like, while working on One Piece,
Yeah.
We were writing because we're huge fans of One
Ahora,
Piece.
ahora.
We were writing like, with writing as we are fans. What do we want to hear as fans of One Piece in One Piece? And when we were writing, we were getting excited because like this is so cool.
Because how this all started for us, even before we got officially on board on the project, we learned that Netflix was making the live action adaptation. And, after having done The Witcher, so we released The Witcher. The album right now is at 500 million streams, which is just insane. And then Toss a Coin was #1 on Billboard, not just in the soundtrack charts, but in the rock charts. That was the summer when Panic at the Disco released High Hopes.
Uy, ese es un pinche rolonón de Panic at the Disco.
Five hopes for living, which I love this song, but they were number 2 on Billboard and we were number 1, which was just insane. So after the Witch,
O sea que tuvimos gente de primer nivel prácticamente en todas las áreas y se nota.
we were looking for our next project, the type of project that would require very unique, intricate, complex music world building. And as soon as we learned about One Piece, we knew that was the one project, that was the right project for us. And even before we got officially on board, we actually shot a very quick, like a 3-minute video. It was a video pitch, just because purely we just got so excited about it. In that video, we literally outlined the whole concept behind the music world building that we would create for One Piece, and what kind of themes we would assign to all of our characters, and what kind of instruments. And then at the end, all the instrumentations that we would assign to every one of our straw hats, all of that we would combine in Luffy's theme, because he's our captain and the glue of our crew. And then we played Luffy's theme, and that was like 1.5 years ago. So now 1.5 years later, the show is out, the soundtrack is out, all of those concepts that we outlined in that video, and even that main theme that we came up with, that became the main theme of the show, and all the concepts stayed 100% true. So I don't think it was about pressure. I think it was just more about excitement and what we would want to see in a show like that, and how we would want to approach this music universe.
So you were writing all this before.
Ese tipo de gente que la presión, güey, los vuelve, los emociona, güey, los vuelve unas máquinas, güey, competitivas, y que los hacen hacer cosas grandiosas, güey. ¿Cómo me encanta esa gente, güey? O sea, cómo la idolatro, güey, la neta, porque es bien difícil, y que lo hagan es bien cabrón.
Before you saw scripts, before you knew any of, or like you had all these ideas, how much did your musical ideas change once you saw the casting and saw these actors, like, you know, embody these characters the way they do? Because they're so good.
I don't think they changed at all.
I don't think they changed because, you know, we're a fan of the manga and the anime. So we already had our images. And, you know, when writing, like, they better be similar to the manga, because otherwise,
Well,
right?
And what the show, I think, does so well is, you know, it was of paramount importance to all of us that the live action adaptation would have its own distinct voice and its own distinct identity, including its own distinct music identity. But at the same time, all of us wanted to remain true to the spirit and the heart of the manga. And I think, like, when we started having all these ideas, even before we were able to read the scripts, or, you know, to see the cast, or to see even any of the rough cuts, you know, we kind of hit the mark right away, even before seeing any of that, just because, you know, being familiar with the property and kind of understanding what the fans would want to see and hear in an adaptation like that.
The amount of intention you put into, like, having instruments for each of Zoro's swords, like, the work that...
Algo iba a decir y se me olvidó. No, digo, o sea, creo que esta entrevista va mucho para como cositas, pequeños detalles para esa gente que es bien geek, de saber cosas bien, internas de la serie, ¿no? Eso de la instrumentalización, cómo armaron, que el pegamento social sea lo de Luffy, ¿no? Buenas noticias, a ver, ahorita las vemos al final, neta mitad.
It's amazing. Did the showrunners, like, ask for any of this, or are they just, like, amazed at what you started doing?
All of that literally comes from that video pitch. All of it. So we have 5 straw hats, and they're all so unique and so different. And yes, they're a crew, but they're not a crew quite yet, basically until we get towards the very end of this season. So it made sense that every single one of our characters would be so distinct and so different. And Matt and Steve were 100% supportive of that idea. They wanted to make every one of our characters very different and unique.
And I feel, you know, and it was incredible that while working on the show, towards, you know, the few months ago, we were working on some scenes.
Towards a few months ago?
Well,
towards a few months ago.
No, a few months ago, we were, you know, working on some scenes, and I remember either Matt or Steve coming back with a note, and it's like, we're hearing the theme of this character. It should be this other theme. And then we're like, oh my gosh, they're so familiar with the themes and how they interpolate and everything. And it gives such a amazing opportunity to have such a dialogue with them, such a creative dialogue on how to interpolate everything.
It's very rare, because by having those themes and instruments for every one of our characters, the whole team, like Matt and Steve, Tomorrow Studios, Netflix, everybody got so familiar with the themes and instrumentations that it's very rare when you get to have such a, an in-depth conversation, about all the themes and instruments. Like, hey, what about using this theme over here? Or maybe we have this character on screen, but what if we use, the instrument of the other character because he's just about to appear on screen? So like these are really in-depth, meaningful conversation, which all really stems from that video. And then in that video, so we outlined the instrument for every one of our characters. So we have Luffy, and that's hurdy-gurdy, because what kind of
violin, fiddle, and banjo.
a little bit of fiddle and banjo, because let's be diverse, but hurdy-gurdy is at the forefront of that because it's a pirate show, so we need a hurdy-gurdy. Yeah. Then we have Nami, and her instrument is flute, and we mainly have her theme performed by flute throughout the whole season before climaxing into her theme's most powerful song rendition, which is called My Sails Are Set, at the end of episode 8, performed by Aurora. Then we have
Zoro.
Fíjense que esto es bien interesante. Una parte de lo que menciona, donde Maeda, Matt Owens, todos estaban muy involucrados con todos en su trabajo. Lo menciona Steven Maeda en la anterior entrevista que vas a encontrar en este canal, de cómo él sí que se metía en muchos aspectos, o sea, de la producción de live action, no solamente lo que le tocaba, sino en más cosas, porque todos saben de One Piece, entonces todos pueden dar su interpretación. Y ahora que mencionan los instrumentos de cada uno, recuerden que también cuando se hace el de Nami, por ahí suenan unas flautillas, ¿no? ¿Recuerdan esos espacios publicitarios en el anime?
Zoro, and I absolutely love that character because musically he gave us so many opportunities. So he has 3 swords, and the idea was, what if we assign a particular instrument to every single one of his swords? So the first one was Bansuri. And the reason behind this is very simple.
It's a very long Indian flute, and it was like, it looks like a sword. Every time, Sonya says, you playing the wrong note, I use it as a sword. I'm like, haha, fight.
See, we're having fun at the studio. Then the second instrument is a frame drum.
A really big frame drum.
It's like a 43-inch frame drum. We have several frame drums in the studio, but we obviously chose the biggest one because the sound is just so mighty and so thick. It's just perfect for one of the swords.
Just very uncomfortable to hold it. Still trying to figure out how to hold it in front of a microphone, but small details.
It's huge. Yeah. Literally, it's huge. And then the third instrument is duduk, which is originally an Armenian instrument, but Zoro has this sword. It's called Wado Ichimonji, and it's a very particular sword.
El duduk es para el Wado Ichimonji, Cuidado.
That has a lot of history as a sword itself, but also has a lot of personal history for Zoro. He doesn't use it very often. He only uses it on very special occasions. So having a very special instrument with kind of like a mystical and sacred quality, such as duduk has, that was a perfect representation for that sword.
And it's so cool because, like, every time during the episodes, Zoro reaches for the Wado Ichimonji's word, that's when we use the duduk coming in just for those specific moment. And it was such a helpful idea to have an instrument for each sword because, whenever we need to change a little bit the texture because it's doing something else, we have the
toolbox.
We have the toolbox for that.
Then we have Sanji, who looks very sleek, kind of.
Sí, o sea, fíjate, o sea, un instrumento para cada espada, güey, y sería bueno volver a ver live action para notar esos detallitos de los instrumentos cada que usa una de esas espadas.
Very jazzy, because he's wearing a black suit, his hair falls on one of his eyes, right? So he definitely has like a jazzy feel just by looking at him.
Sí.
So we were like, why not representing him with like a big band jazz funk fusion ensemble? And also the way he fights, he uses kick-based martial arts. So, Sanji is there kicking, and then Giona is here.
We were thinking, what if we follow that with such cool drum grooves, jazzy drum grooves? And we're like, that's going to be cool.
So Sanji is kicking there, and Giona is kicking right here. Works just fine. And then we have Usopp, who, as of right now, he's still cowardly. and his biggest dream is to become the bravest pirate out there. So as of right now, his instrument is an ukulele.
¿Un ukulele?
It's actually a bluesy ukulele. There is no such
Blues,
genre
okay.
really, but there is now in One Piece because there are no boundaries in this universe.
One Piece creando géneros musicales. ¿Cómo chingados no?
So for now, we have it as an ukulele, and then as in further seasons, Usopp is going to grow as the character and become braver and stronger. His instrument literally will also start growing, and from a small ukulele, will keep going bigger, bigger, bigger. Maybe we'll eventually reach a 12 strings guitar, just
Well, maybe
Okay.
no bigger.
maybe even bigger. Yes. So
Una guitarra de 12
that's going to
cuerdas
be a
está
journey for
cabrón.
Usopp. But having all those instruments was absolutely essential also because the show is so elaborate and it's 8 episodes featuring pretty much 8 hours of music. It's a lot of material and it's very easy to get lost when there is so much going on. So having a very cohesive narrative, not only on screen, but also musically, it's absolutely imperative for a complex show like this.
But also because it gives us so much fun writing for it also, because like, you know, this approach is not just for the main characters, but also for all the villains. The Going Merry has its own theme. Like, for example, we hear the Going Merry theme when Luffy first sees the Going Merry, right? But then in episode 8, when they're doing the Barrow Pledge, that whole scene starts with the Going Merry theme. And then on top, when we have each character saying what they're pledging, we have each character's instrument or snippets of his theme on top of the Going Merry, blending all together. So
it's all about creating that dialogue. Just as there is a dialogue on screen, there is a dialogue happening musically, and that's what makes all of this cohesive and unified.
Eso es bien importante, ¿no? La música siempre es parte bien fundamental, güey, de series, películas. Eso que menciona, ¿no? De que al final en esa parte del barril que es bien, bien, bien emotiva, cómo combinan ciertas partes de cada tema musical de cada personaje junto con el Going Merry, y recordar que al final se escucha el We Are. Ese es un detallazo, a ver si lo mencionan.
like in One Piece.
In One Piece, yes.
So with all these instruments, are these all things that you've used before? Like, did you have to learn anything new in order
Yes.
to or like
Which
Googling?
ones did we learn?
I sacrificed myself with mandolin. I'm originally a drummer, right? But I play drums, then I started playing piano, and then during the pandemic, I picked it up. I started learning guitars, bass, all the string instruments. So for here, I was like, oh, it would be cool to do mandolin. Oh my gosh, the strings on the mandolin are so thin. They cut so much through it. I was like, this is a torture, this instrument. So we did mandolin.
Then you also recorded some ukuleles. For ukuleles, we had an incredible soloist. His name is Johan Frank, and he's
Johan
just
Frank.
fantastic. But there were a couple of scenes where we didn't really need Johan, and it was just about like some textures and other cool things. So
some weird melodic, chromatic that I can do very easily since, yeah.
So Giona took over ukulele. What else?
We did some other percussion, like we started mastering more like bongos, congas, all that stuff.
We already after The Witcher, we were able to assemble such a huge collection of instruments.
The tongue drum.
Tangram, okay.
It's throughout the whole.
Hang on. So after The Witcher, see, there's a lot. We were able to assemble such a huge collection of instruments. Like we literally pretty much don't have any space in the studio. But if after The Witcher there was still some space, now there's no more space in the studio. And the way you walk through the studio, there's kind of like a pathway, and you go like that because it's just full of instruments. So beyond mandolin and ukulele, which were new for this project, we also got a bunch of drums. So we have very specific bongos and congas that we're using throughout the score. Then we have a steel tongue drum.
Yes.
That's what it's called?
No, that's an idiopan.
Okay, which one?
But then we also have the tongue drum,
the log drum.
The log drum.
Okay, so it's an instrument. It's weird because it has many, many titles. If you Google it, it's like you're gonna see it under different titles. I think the most common is the
O sea, a mí me encanta la música, me está encantando la entrevista. Yo sé que a lo mejor para muchos no es muy interesante porque no hay, pero creo que para adentrarte todavía más a entender todo el trabajo de fondo que hay en One Piece, ver cómo estas dos personas están disfrutando la plática y se ve que disfrutaron el trabajar en el live action de One Piece con la música, siendo ellos fans conocedores de la serie como lo han mencionado. se me hace bien bonito, güey. O sea, se me hace es como estar reaccionando a la gente que trabajó, güey, dentro de eso. Y está muy cool, se me hace, la verdad.
Log drum.
Okay.
So it's literally like
It's a rectangular piece of wood. It's like a box with tongues cut into it.
Yeah, and you can produce so many different sonorities. And the cool thing about it, it sounds very kind of peculiar and maybe slightly off, but very quirky, which was just perfect for this show.
And then, you know, on The Witcher, Sonya had basically all the vocal solos, but on One Piece, it was my opportunity to
Le
show
tocó
off my
ahora a él
vocal
a
capabilities.
cantar.
Not only we realize I can sing higher than Sonya in octaves,
Fact.
facts, but we put it like,
Yeah, so if on The Witcher, it was mainly me doing all the background vocals because we needed that kind of magical witchery sonority.
Ok, sí,
are
claro.
you trying to say that I don't sound magical when I sing?
As much as everybody loves you, Giona, probably
Güey,
not.
qué pedo. No mames, güey. ¿Cómo se la curan, güey?
So on
Me
One
encantan.
Piece, that was his opportunity to truly shine with his vocals.
Yeah.
And for example, in episode 1, when there is a courtyard fight
Mhm.
and they're fighting Captain Axe Morgan, this is where Jonas' vocal talents are in the forefront.
Yeah, and I remember when we were recording it, like with a few takes, and you know, it's different stacks, like one octave, then octave higher. And I remember Sonya's like, do it one more. I'm like, please, tomorrow, please.
Le acabó la voz.
Let's see, what else? Well, back to hurdy-gurdy for a second. Yes, we used hurdy-gurdy on The Witcher. We used it quite a bit, but think about hurdy-gurdy. It's actually an incredibly versatile instrument. It was created in medieval Europe, like 13th, 14th century, and it was mainly used to accompany dances. And the way we used it in The Witcher was more or less in its traditional sense because we have a lot of dances when Ciri is at Sintra, so it sounds in its more traditional way. Now with One Piece, we really went all the way, and beyond, for example, using hurdy-gurdy for Luffy, we also use hurdy-gurdy for Kuro, which is one of our villains and the captain of the Black Cat Pirates crew.
Mhm.
But we use it in such a way, it's used in a combination with a shrieking dulcimer. And when you put them together in such a particular way, the sound that they produce really sounds like cats meowing. And because
Ok.
Kuro is the captain of Black Cat's pirate, having that cat meowing type of sound was just perfect for him. In fact, when we sent that track to the team, Matt and Steve were like, guys, do you have a cat in the studio? Like, did you record a cat? We're like, no.
Consiguieron un sonido tan perfecto que pensaron que tenían ahí a la
Hurdy-gurdy.
mascota.
And also for Kuro, because, you know, his trademark, I don't know, weapon are the claws.
Yeah, he has this very iconic look with his iconic claws. So we had to find a way how to incorporate that musically.
And we were like, what better way than recording when, you know, the sound of when you're sharpening knives, like a chef sharpening knives. So we grabbed knives and we started sharpening in front of a mic. It was tricky trying to figure out how to cut the microphone in the process.
Well,
but
good news, no composers were heard in the process and no microphones were heard in the process. Back to Jonas' vocal talents, we forgot about Buggy. That's another thing, because Buggy, another one of our main villains, he's such a fantastic villain. He is really a very powerful villain, but also an unhinged clown. So there is that whole circus vibe about him going on, and we really had to find a circus way to represent his theme, but with a cool twist. So what we do for Buggy is we have Buggy's theme, and that theme features a really fast-paced riff. Buggy's signature move is chop chop, because he can chop his body into multiple parts, right? So when he does his signature move, it's like chop chop,
cannon,
right? So the idea was, what if we literally incorporate chop chop into his musical theme? So when you hear that riff going like ta 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 ta, if you pay attention, what you actually hear is chop 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 chop.
Wow.
Ok, ese es un gran detalle, ¿eh? O sea, el nivel de detalle de cada tema musical me está sorprendiendo, ¿eh? La verdad, wow.
Yeah, we recorded.
Featuring Giona.
Yeah, I recorded myself doing chop, 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 chop. We recorded, stack it, and
in like voices of different pitches, stacking that together, and you get bucket chop 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 chop. So
and then another one, for both like a very precise direction from Matt and Steve was that for the straw hat, just to use acoustic instruments. We don't want to use any electronic instruments whatsoever. But for the Marines and also Arlong, we can use electronic instruments, because for the Marines they're more technological advanced, so we can use electric guitar or synthesizers. So we got a couple of hardware synthesizers and we had fun with that.
That's what I'm saying. No space in the studio at all.
No, of course.
Güey, creo que le ha hecho como 3 preguntas, güey, en toda la entrevista, o 4, no sé.
It's incredible. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll ask like a couple quick ones, but I'm curious, like, do you guys have, I mean, now that this is all out and it's all done and like everything, do you have a favorite cue from the soundtrack if you had to pick?
It's 4 hours long.
I know.
It's like, you're my dragons, you're my babies.
No, there's like obviously Wealth and Power for me, or
Wealth and Power is really cool
la principal,
because
¿no?
it's Roger's theme and Luffy's theme. And Luffy's theme, which is the main theme of the show, it's a reversed version of Roger's theme, because their characters, they have some similarities and similar character traits between the two. So it just made sense to find some similarities between their themes, and the way to do it was by reversing them.
Or like, for example, the track called Let's Disappear, which is how episode 5 opens up. Or
well, obviously my sails are set because Aurora is just brilliant, and we're so happy that we found our musical Nami, because we were looking for a global artist with really a global presence who would be able to portray such a complex character, because there's so much to Nami. On one hand, she's a brilliant and sharp thief and navigator and a total badass. But then on the other hand, there's so much depth to her character, and there's, a very dramatic past and a childhood trauma. So we needed an artist who would really be able to encapsulate all these different nuances of that character while sounding fragile and emotional, but at the same time being also able to sound very powerful. And Aurora was exactly that artist. And, from when she starts the song, she sounds so fragile and so delicate. But then when we get to the last chorus and that there is that powerful chanting, she really gave it all. And I love that song, and I loved working with Aurora.
Also, the scene in episode 3 when we cut from Nami and Kaya talking, we have the flute and oboe duet moment. Then we cut.
I think the track is called Kaya and Usopp.
Yeah, and then we cut to Usopp and Luffy talking in the kitchen, and we go into the bluesy, rocky ukulele, and then we cut back to Nami, and then we cut back to Usopp and Luffy, and then when Luffy realize who's Usopp's father, and we go into this heroic rendition of the theme. Every time I get goosebumps, I'm like, yes!
I love that track because that's a great way of musical storytelling, because just as there is a dialogue happening on screen between different characters, there is exactly the same dialogue happening musically within their instruments. And as we cut to different characters, that instrumentation changes according to those characters. So I just love the intricacy of that scene. Or Mihawk versus Zoro versus Mihawk featuring Marcin. I mean, that's, first of all, we love Mihawk. Steve Ward, who is the actor who portrayed Mihawk, I mean, he's just brilliant. And as soon as we saw Mihawk on screen, we knew that we had to get the artist who would be able to portray all the awesomeness that Mihawk is delivering on screen and translate that into music. And we knew right away, even before we started writing music, we knew that it had to be Marcin. And what he brought into his performance, it's just it's his 1000%. And I love the track.
Obviously, this is not...
Que claro, creo que la persona que interpreta el tema es como es un tema muy español, o sea, es un tema español como de bueno, de música típica española, con guitarra española, lógicamente, y es no me acuerdo, por ahí salía que es un español, un guitarrista español el que toca el tema de Mihawk.
Being written, it's not being filmed right now, like a season 2, we don't know anything, but clearly you two have gone above and beyond already. Are you already writing music that you want to include in future seasons?
I want a vacation.
As of right now, it's a very type of silent type of music, very relaxing and
Yeah, like when you go on Spotify and you click like lounge, ambient music,
white noise.
white noise.
Ruido blanco.
That's it right now.
No, but there are obviously.
But ideas are happening.
Ok, bueno, pues hasta ahí llegó la entrevista de Sonya Belousova y Giona, ay, se me olvida el nombre, es Giona Ostinelli, los compositores oficiales de live action de One Piece, que como digo, probablemente no sea muy interesante para muchos, para mí sí que me encanta la música, se me hizo bastante cool lo de tantos instrumentos usados, que al principio no lo notas, pero ya cuando la vea por segunda vez, créame que le voy a poner atención a todos esos detallitos, lo del chop chop, lo del gato, o sea, increíble. Dime lo que más te gustó de esta entrevista y nos vemos en el siguiente videito. No olvides suscribirte y dejar tu like y algún comentario y seguirnos en la plataforma morada.